So friends, the Epstein-Maxwell scandal continues to drag Donald Trump down. And we hear Trump flunkies like his former criminal defense attorney, Todd Blanche, say, we're going to release the Ghislaine Maxwell interview. Well, pretty much any experienced prosecutor will tell you that before you can believe anything Ghislaine Maxwell says about Donald Trump or anybody else, there's one thing she has to do, and she hasn't. Let's talk about that, because justice matters. Hey all, Glenn Kirshner here. So friends, the Trump-Epstein-Maxwell scandal ain't going away. And now Todd Blanche, Deputy Attorney General and Donald Trump's former criminal defense attorney, might try to convince us to believe Maxwell when she says, Donald Trump did nothing wrong. He's pure as the driven snow. But while there are a lot of reasons that we're not going to believe Ghislaine Maxwell, there's one reason in particular that she cannot, will not, must not be believed, and it has to do with how prosecutors approach and interview someone in Maxwell's position, someone who has committed horrific crimes, been convicted of those crimes, and is serving a lengthy prison term. But before we turn to that, let's start with the new reporting. This from CNN. Headline, tapes, transcripts, subpoenas, and legal twists, Trump's Epstein storm deepens again. And that article begins, Lordy, there are tapes. In the latest turn of the immortal scandal over Jeffrey Epstein, CNN first reported Tuesday that Donald Trump's administration has recorded conversations with Epstein's convicted sex trafficker accomplice, Ghislaine Maxwell, and is working on a transcript which it may even release. The revelation about Deputy Attorney General Todd Blanche's conversations with Maxwell last month is certain to renew demands for transparency from sectors of the president's base that first whipped the Epstein storm into overdrive. But it's hard to see how releasing a transcript of the interview with Maxwell could end up making people less interested in the intrigue, which would be the ostensible purpose of the exercise. More likely, such a move would risk repeating the damaging cycle that has plunged the White House ever deeper into a political morass. Every time the administration takes a step designed to quell the scandal, all it succeeds in doing is raising expectations and brewing new conspiracy theories among MAGA activists obsessed with the case, while widening public exposure to an episode that has blotted out the president's summer winning streak. Well, I'm going to part ways with the assertion that Donald Trump is on some kind of a summer winning streak. But setting that aside, I want to turn to something that is fundamental to prosecutors. And it involves how we approach someone in Ghislaine Maxwell's situation. Someone who has committed horrific crimes, gone to trial, been convicted unanimously beyond a reasonable doubt by a jury of her peers of committing those crimes, has been sentenced and is now serving decades in prison. How do prosecutors approach someone like that when they're going to interview that person about the possible crimes of others, right? What that person can tell prosecutors about what others did. Typically, bigger criminal fish is what we want to talk to somebody in Ghislaine Maxwell's circumstances about. How do we approach someone in Ghislaine Maxwell's circumstance? Well, first of all, what prosecutors generally want, if they are honest, honorable, ethical public servants, so I'm not talking about Todd Blanche here, I'm talking about, the normal course of prosecutorial business. I sat down with people like this more times than I can count in my 30 years as a prosecutor. What prosecutors generally are looking for is truthful, accurate information that can be corroborated by other evidence, other sources, independent from the person who's providing the information, so we can have confidence in the credibility of what somebody like Ghislaine Maxwell or somebody in her situation serving decades in prison is telling us. Because think about it, that person's going to have an incentive to please the prosecutor, to tell the prosecutor anything they think the prosecutor might want to know, might find helpful in going after others for committing crimes. That's why prosecutors have to be extraordinarily careful when they are assessing the information they're getting from somebody like a Ghislaine Maxwell. So first of all, let's acknowledge that Todd Blanche doesn't have any interest in getting truthful information from Ghislaine Maxwell. He undoubtedly wants information that will protect his former criminal client and current boss, Donald Trump. But we're going to talk about, the ordinary prosecutorial practice by somebody who takes their, ethical obligations seriously. When we sit down with somebody in Ghislaine Maxwell's circumstances, you know what the first thing is we do? We have to do this before we move on to asking them what they can tell us about the possible crimes of others. They have to admit what they did, the crimes they committed. They have to accept responsibility fully, without equivocation or minimizing their conduct. And frankly, that should be easy for Ghislaine Maxwell because she's already been convicted of those crimes. But before prosecutors are going to start asking a witness like that, a defendant like that, about the crimes of others, they have to fess up and take responsibility for their own crimes, all of them. Why? Because if they don't admit to their own crimes, there's no way in hell they can or should be believed about the crimes of others. Can you imagine putting a witness on the stand who said, yeah, I was convicted, I was sentenced to 20 years, but I didn't do any of that. I didn't commit any crimes, but let me tell you about the crimes other people committed. Do you think a jury is likely to believe that kind of a witness? Because that kind of a witness, their credibility, lower than whale shit. Doesn't get any lower. So before Todd Blanche started to ask Ghislaine Maxwell about Donald Trump, the first thing he would do if he was an honest, ethical, experienced prosecutor is make sure she admitted to her own crimes and took full responsibility, didn't minimize anything. What are the odds? What are the odds Todd Blanche started the way any responsible, honest, ethical prosecutor would have started the interview with Ghislaine Maxwell? I would say the odds are slim to none, and slim is fading fast. You know he didn't do that. You know he was there ready to receive Ghislaine Maxwell's statement that Donald Trump did nothing wrong. He is pure as the driven snow. By the way, when do I get my presidential pardon from the person I just exonerated, I just helped? You know, friends, Ghislaine Maxwell saying that Donald Trump did nothing wrong would be like John Gotti saying, there's no such thing as the mafia. It would be like Jeffrey Dahmer saying, there's no such thing as cannibalism. So you know what? Todd, go ahead and release Ghislaine Maxwell's statement, release the transcript, release the audio recording. Because when she claims that Donald Trump did absolutely nothing wrong as part of the child sex trafficking conspiracy that she was in with Jeffrey Epstein and that she was convicted of. When she claims Donald Trump did nothing wrong, I don't think you're going to find many people gullible enough to believe her. Because I absolutely believe that to most people, to the vast majority of people, justice matters. Friends, as always, please stay safe. Please stay tuned. And I look forward to talking with you all again tomorrow.